Welcome back to the fourth and final installment in my four-part video series on comparative storytelling. So far, we've seen the various ways in which Eastern and Western stories portray characters, relationships, and plot. Now for the most fundamental connection between culture and storytelling. We will see how the values of a culture or society permeate into its stories. Before we investigate the traits of ideal heroes in Eastern and Western stories, we must first understand the philosophical and cultural values of each society. Obviously, we're already familiar with the Western set of values, so I'll skip a discussion of those. Influencing the Vietnamese Le, Tran, and Nguyen dynasties, the Edo period of Japan, and unified Shilla of Korea, Confucianism was and still is incredibly influential in not just China. The 6 core values of Confucianism are shown here. Filial piety specifically refers to respect and obedience towards one's parents, but can be generalized to a venerance for elders. Benevolence, also translated as humanity, refers to mercy, forgiveness, and otherwise selfless behaviors. Loyalty refers to the adherence to one's principles and devotion to one's family or country. Wisdom emphasizes the importance of education, rationalism, and the pursuit of knowledge. Fidelity, slightly different from loyalty, specifically refers to faithfulness to one's lover, but can also mean allegiance to one's friends. Finally, propriety insists that one must adopt composure and understand etiquette in social situations. Similarly influencing Eastern cultures is Buddhist philosophy, particularly its Mahayana branch. Buddhist philosophy is very complex with its 4 noble truths and eightfold path, so my attempt at summarizing Buddhism break it down into 4 main principles. The first, devotion, requires commitment to meditation and adherence to religious principles. Next, honesty refers to avoiding gossiping, lying, stealing, or performing actions with malicious intent. Then, nonviolence entails a pledge of refusing to harm other beings or nature, and in some cases, vegetarianism. Finally, restraint refers to austerity with regard to material possessions, pleasures, and temptations. In Jin Yong's Legend of the Condor Heroes, the 2 main characters Guo Jing and Yang Kang have wildly different personalities. Guo Jing is untalented, slow-witted, and socially awkward, but he's genuine, perseverant, and kind. Meanwhile, Yang Kang is talented, smart, and socially intelligent, but he is callous, hypocritical, and ambitious. Guo Jing is perceived as a hero because he aligns with the ideals of Confucianism: humility, benevolence, resilience, and honesty. He is fortunate enough to receive the mentorship of many powerful martial artists because of his sincerity and good character, becoming the most powerful martial artist as a result. Meanwhile, Yang Kang meets an unfortunate fate and is remembered in infamy after his death. I especially like this quote from the Legend of the Condor Heroes because it illustrates a similar sentiment between Western and Eastern heroes. But as the good-hearted young man discovers, a hero is not merely born. He is honed in the moments when his love and loyalty are the most sorely tested. In terms of heroism, I wouldn't say Western and Eastern stories differ by too much. After all, likable characters are universal. However, it is nonetheless fascinating to see how different philosophies breed slightly different heroes. No doubt, Western heroes also generally feature similar traits such as honesty, benevolence, and loyalty, but a larger emphasis seems to be placed upon traits such as courage, charisma, and strength. Some Confucian traits such as humility, fidelity, and filial piety are often not even considered at all in the classic Western hero archetype. Hercules killed his wife and family in a frenzy, Theseus abandoned Ariadne, Perseus turned King Atlas to stone in revenge, and Achilles brutally dragged Hector's dead body around on a chariot. All of these actions would be considered unredeemable in an Eastern story. Unsurprisingly, the classic Greek hero is starkly different from the ideal Confucian Junzi, or gentleman. However, after significant cultural exchange, the modern-day protagonists of Eastern and Western stories alike have all converged upon similarly likable characteristics. Still, it remains to be asked where this difference in heroes arises. Echoing back to the idea of good and evil, people are perceived as imperfect reflections of God in Western cultures, while gods are perceived as perfect embodiments of ideal people in Eastern cultures. As a result, divine intervention plays a much more different role in Western stories. As in the case of both Homeric epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, characters are seen as vehicles for a divine hand. Diomedes and Odysseus both reflect Athena's wisdom and carry out her will. Zeus and Ares supports Hector and Priam in the Trojan War, and as a result instill a heavy militaristic tradition in the Trojan army. In more Christianity-influenced stories, God is a perfect being that serves as a spiritual manifestation of one side of a character's internal conflict. In other words, Western stories emphasize man-God relationships and hence man-self ties. On the other hand, the Eastern pantheon of Taoist, Shinto, Buddhist, and folk deities is largely comprised of former mortals that cultivated to become immortal through proper conduct and devotion. Consequently, gods are perfect reflections of people, and heaven is a perfect reflection of our current world. Furthermore, because of the Eastern emphasis on balance, deities often do not act upon their own conscience or desires, rather doing their part of the larger whole to maintain order in the universe. I conclude with an analysis of Eastern versus Western literature by the writer Louis Alfieri. In Asian literature, content, and films, nobody, regardless of stature, is considered safe from the challenges of life. There's a much greater understanding of the interconnectedness of life in society as a complete ecosystem. In Japan, in particular, there's a much greater understanding and acceptance of impermanence, different perspectives on beauty, symmetry nature, and its impact on society. This is a reflection on the power of nature to shape the people, culture, and the land through earthquakes, typhoons, and tsunamis that have occurred through the eons. Asian cultures often look through a lens of observing life as a chain of events, transience, states of being, and reincarnation. If there's anything to take away from this lengthy investigation, it's that stories are powerful. Stories are a way of communicating themes, feelings, and our ideas to each other. Stories reveal key aspects of our culture, personality, and beliefs. Stories have the ability to influence others in a way that rational logic just can't achieve. Since our ancestors began recounting hunting tales and passing down creation myths through oral tradition, storytelling has been an integral part of the human experiences in societies all around the world. The stories we tell reflect our heritage, our values, and our opinions. This presentation may have been on the differences between two different cultures and their ways of telling stories, but it is more important to recognize the unity in diversity. Perhaps the most universal aspect of storytelling is that our stories will outlive ourselves as well as our society by many, many times.